The notification sound from my wife's phone echoed through our kitchen like a death knell. Celia had left her device on the granite counter while she showered upstairs, and the family iPad was synced to her messages. I wasn't snooping, not intentionally anyway. I was just checking the weather when the group chat popped up. Wine Wednesday Warriors, that's what they called themselves. Rachel, Kim, and Jess. Celia's inner circle of suburban queens who spent their evenings dissecting everyone else's lives over overpriced Chardonnay. The latest message thread made my blood run cold. Rachel, tonight's the night, ladies. Time to tell Evan he's done. Kim, finally. Celia deserves so much better than that construction worker. Jess, we'll be right there with you, babe. United front. Celia, thanks, girls. I can't do this alone. He's going to flip when I tell him we're getting divorced. I set the iPad down with trembling hands. 23 years of marriage, and she was planning to ambush me with her cheerleading squad. The shower was still running upstairs. I had maybe 10 minutes before she came down, got dressed, and headed to Santino's wine bar for what I now knew would be my execution. My name is Evan Driscoll. I'm 41 years old, and I supervise construction crews for Henderson Development. It's honest work that pays well enough to afford the 4-bedroom colonial in Millbrook Heights that Celia suddenly wanted to escape from. I'm not college-educated like her HR director friends, but I'm not stupid either. 20 years in construction teaches you to read people, to spot structural weaknesses before they bring the whole building down. And right now, I was looking at a marriage that had been rotting from the foundation up. The shower shut off. I grabbed a beer from the fridge and settled into my recliner, trying to look casual. My phone buzzed with a text from Sam Rodriguez, my best friend and the owner of CrossFit Millbrook. Sam. Drinks later? Jenny's working late again. Me. Rain check. Celia's having another girls' night. Might be a long evening. Sam. Those women drink more than my construction crew. Stay strong, brother. If only he knew how strong I'd need to be. Celia appeared 20 minutes later, looking like she'd stepped off a magazine cover. Designer jeans, silk blouse, perfectly styled blonde hair. She was beautiful. I'd never denied that. But there was something cold in her blue eyes now, something that hadn't been there when we'd met in college. I'm heading out, she announced, not quite meeting my gaze. Have fun with the girls, I replied, taking a long pull from my beer. Try not to solve all the world's problems in one night. She paused at the door. For a second, I thought she might say something real, something honest. Instead, she just grabbed her purse and left. I waited exactly 1 hour before my phone rang. Celia's face filled the screen, wine-flushed and smiling. Behind her, I could see the familiar burgundy walls of Santino's private back room. Evan, she said, her voice artificially bright, the girls and I wanted to talk to you about something. The camera shifted, and suddenly, I was looking at all 4 of them. Rachel Martinez sat to Celia's right, yoga instructor, mother of 2, with the kind of aggressive positivity that made my teeth ache. Kim Patterson flanked the left side, elementary school teacher, always ready with gossip and unsolicited advice. Jess Harper completed the circle, mommy blogger with 40,000 Instagram followers and the emotional depth of a puddle. Hi, Evan, they chorused, like some twisted version of a morning talk show. Ladies, I said evenly. Enjoying your wine? We've been talking, Rachel began, her voice taking on that patronizing tone she used when explaining yoga poses to beginners. And we think it's time for some honesty in your marriage. Honesty, I repeated. Interesting concept. Celia leaned into the frame. Evan, we've decided it's time to divorce you. The words hung in the air like smoke. All 4 women were smirking now, waiting for me to crumble, to beg, to make a scene they could dissect for weeks. Instead, I smiled. Well, I said, settling back in my chair, that's certainly direct. But before we start dividing assets, I have a question for your support group there. The smirks faltered slightly. So none of you care that she's been seeing your husbands? The silence stretched like a taut wire. I watched their faces change, confusion, disbelief, then the first flickers of doubt. What did you say? Rachel's voice was sharp now, the yoga serenity cracking. You heard me, I continued, my voice steady. Celia's been having affairs, multiple affairs, with married men, specifically with Brian, Derek, and that personal trainer from the country club. What's his name? Marcus? That's ridiculous, Kim sputtered, but I could see her eyes darting to Celia. Is it? I asked. Rachel, when was the last time Brian worked late on a Tuesday? Kim, does Derek still go to that gym across town? The one that's 20 minutes farther than the one in our neighborhood? Celia's face had gone white. Evan, stop. Stop what? Telling the truth? Isn't that what this intervention is about? Honesty? Jess was the first to crack. Celia, what is he talking about? But I wasn't done. 23 years of marriage had given me an encyclopedia of secrets, and I was just getting started. Ladies, did you know your friend here has a second phone? A little red iPhone she keeps in her gym bag? Very discreet? Or that she's been telling people she's separated when she goes to that wine bar in Albany, the one where she met Marcus? The camera was shaking now. Someone, probably Kim, was crying. You're lying, Rachel said, but her voice lacked conviction. Am I? Rachel, check Brian's credit card statements. Look for charges at the Marriott on Route 9. Tuesday afternoons, usually between 2 and 4. Kim, Derek's been buying a lot of protein powder lately, hasn't he? From that nutrition store near the gym? The call ended abruptly. I sat in my chair, beer growing warm in my hand, and waited. My phone buzzed with texts. Rachel, we need to talk, now. Kim, how long have you known? Jess, OMG, is this real? I ignored them all and opened a new message to Sam. Me, change of plans. I think I'll take that drink after all. Sam, everything okay? Me, just getting started. Sam's gym was my sanctuary. While Celia spent her evenings plotting my demise over wine flights, I found peace in the simple honesty of iron and sweat. The place smelled like rubber mats and determination, filled with people who understood that strength came from showing up day after day, even when you didn't feel like it. You look like hell, Sam said when I walked in the next morning. He was setting up for the 6 a.m. class, arranging kettlebells with the precision of a man who'd spent 8 years in the Marines before opening his gym. Thanks for the pep talk, coach. Sam Rodriguez was built like a fire hydrant, 5'8" and solid muscle, with graying hair and laugh lines that spoke to a man who'd found his calling. He'd been my best friend since we'd met on a job site 15 years ago, back when he was doing construction between deployments. Seriously, what happened? You look like you haven't slept. I told him about the phone call, about the ambush that had backfired spectacularly. Sam listened without interruption, occasionally nodding or shaking his head. Jesus, Evan, how long have you known about the affairs? Suspected for months. Confirmed about 3 weeks ago. I grabbed a 45-pound plate and started loading it onto the squat rack. Found some interesting photos on her cloud account. Apparently she forgot we share the same Apple ID. And you didn't say anything? I was trying to figure out my next move. Guess she beat me to it. The gym door chimed, and Mrs. Keller shuffled in. Eleanor Keller was 73 years old, lived 2 houses down from us, and had been coming to Sam's senior fitness classes for 3 years. She was also the unofficial neighborhood intelligence network. Morning, boys, she said, her voice carrying the authority of someone who'd taught high school English for 40 years. Evan, I heard quite a commotion at your house last night. Everything all right? Define all right, I muttered. Mrs. Keller's eyes sharpened. Well, I did see that Martinez boy's Tesla in your driveway around midnight. Thought that was odd, considering his wife was supposedly at book club. Sam and I exchanged glances. Brian was at my house? Oh, yes. Parked right behind Celia's car. They seemed to be having quite the animated discussion, lots of hand gestures. My phone had been buzzing all morning with calls from Celia that I'd ignored. Now I was starting to understand why she was so desperate to reach me. Mrs. Keller, I said carefully, how often have you seen Brian's car at my house? She tilted her head, considering. Oh, fairly regularly. Tuesday afternoons mostly. Sometimes Thursdays. I always assumed he was there to see you, but now that I think about it, your truck was never in the driveway those times. The pieces clicked into place. Celia had been bringing her lovers to our house, our bed. The rage that followed was so pure, it was almost cleansing. Evan, Sam said quietly, you need to be smart about this. I'm being very smart. In fact, I think it's time to have a conversation with Brian Martinez. Brian worked at Millbrook Financial, a small investment firm that catered to the town's growing population of wealthy retirees. He drove a white Tesla Model S, lived in a McMansion on the golf course, and had the kind of artificially white smile that made me want to check my wallet. I found him at Starbucks on Main Street, reading the Wall Street Journal and sipping what looked like a drink that cost more than my lunch. He looked up when I approached, and I watched his face cycle through confusion, recognition, and then poorly concealed panic. Evan, hey buddy, how's it going? It's going, I said, sliding into the chair across from him uninvited. We need to talk. Brian's hand trembled slightly as he reached for his coffee. About what? About my wife. About Tuesday afternoons. About the fact that you were at my house last night having what Mrs. Keller described as an animated discussion with Celia. The color drained from his face. I don't know what you're talking about. Sure you do. See, the thing about affairs, Brian, is that they leave traces. Credit card statements, hotel receipts, text messages. And when the affair is happening in my house, in my bed, well, that leaves traces too. I pulled out my phone and showed him a photo, his Tesla in my driveway, time-stamped last Tuesday at 2:47 p.m. I have a security camera, I said conversationally. Motion activated. It's amazing what people do when they think no one's watching. Brian's breathing was getting shallow. What do you want? I want you to understand something very clearly. My marriage is over. Celia made that decision and I'm fine with it. But you're going to have some explaining to do to Rachel. You can't tell Rachel. She'll take the kids. She'll take everything. That's not my problem. I stood to leave, then turned back. Oh, and Brian, stay away from my house. Stay away from my wife. And if I were you, I'd start looking for a good divorce attorney. You're going to need one. The coffee shop was quiet, except for the hiss of the espresso machine and the sound of Brian Martinez's world falling apart. My phone rang as I walked to my truck. Celia's name flashed on the screen. This time I answered. We need to talk, she said without preamble. Now you want to talk? That's interesting. Last night you seemed pretty confident about your decision. Evan, please, can you come home? We need to discuss this like adults. Adults, I repeated. You mean like how adults don't ambush their spouse with a divorce announcement over FaceTime? Or like how adults don't fuck their friends' husbands in the marital bed? The silence stretched. I'll be home in 20 minutes, she said finally. We're going to settle this. Yes, I agreed. We are. Celia was waiting in the living room when I got home, perched on the edge of our cream-colored sofa like she was ready to bolt. She'd changed out of her wine night outfit into jeans and a sweater, trying to look approachable, vulnerable. It might have worked 6 months ago. Sit down, she said, gesturing to the chair across from her. I'm good standing. She took a breath, composing herself. What you said last night was cruel and unnecessary. My friends didn't deserve that. Your friends ambushed me with a divorce announcement. I'd say we're even. This is between us, Evan. It always has been. Dragging other people into our problems. Other people? I laughed, and the sound was harsh in the quiet room. Celia, you've been fucking other people. Literally. In our house. In our bed. You made this about other people the moment you decided to spread your legs for Brian Martinez. She flinched like I'd slapped her. Don't be disgusting. Disgusting? You want to know what's disgusting? Finding out your wife of 23 years has been running a one-woman escort service for married men. What's disgusting is having Mrs. Keller ask me if we're having marital problems because she keeps seeing strange cars in our driveway when I'm at work. You don't understand. I understand perfectly. You got bored. You wanted excitement. You wanted to feel desired by men who couldn't have you permanently, only temporarily. The forbidden fruit thing, right? The thrill of sneaking around? Celia's composure was cracking. It wasn't like that. No. Then explain it to me. Help me understand why my wife decided to audition for a reality show called Housewives Gone Wild without mentioning it to her husband. She stood up, pacing to the window. You wouldn't understand. You've never understood what I need. What you need. I've given you everything. This house, financial security, freedom to pursue your career. What I apparently haven't given you is permission to fuck half the neighborhood. Stop saying that. Why? Because it's true? Because it's ugly? You know what's ugly, Celia. Having your wife's friends call you to ask if the rumors are true. Having to lie to protect someone who clearly doesn't give a damn about protecting you. She turned from the window, and for the first time, I saw something that might have been shame in her eyes. Rachel called me this morning, she said quietly. She's filing for divorce. Kim, too. They think I destroyed their marriages. You did destroy their marriages. Brian and Derek made choices. But you were the catalyst. You were the one who made it easy for them to cheat. I never meant for anyone to get hurt. Bullshit. You knew exactly what you were doing. You knew Brian was married to your friend. You knew Derek had kids. You knew Marcus was engaged to that nurse from Albany General. You just didn't care. My phone buzzed with a text. I glanced at it and couldn't help smiling. Sam. Derek Patterson just canceled his gym membership. Effective immediately. Seemed nervous. What's so funny? Celia asked. Derek just quit Sam's gym. Apparently, word is getting around. Her face went white. What did you do? Me? I haven't done anything. Yet. But you know how small towns work, honey. Secrets don't stay secret for long. You can't destroy people's lives over this. I'm not destroying anything. I'm just not protecting you anymore. There's a difference. She sank back onto the sofa, and for a moment, she looked like the girl I'd married. Young, vulnerable, lost. What do you want from me, Evan? I want honesty. Real honesty. How long has this been going on? 6 months. Try again. She closed her eyes. 2 years. How many men? Does it matter? It matters to me. 5, maybe 6. Names. Evan. Names, Celia. I'm going to find out anyway. Make this easier on both of us. She rattled off the list like she was reading a grocery receipt. Brian Martinez, Derek Patterson, Marcus Webb from the country club, Tom Chen from her office, a guy named Mike she'd met at a conference in Boston. Anyone else I know? No. You're lying. I'm not. Celia, I've been married to you for 23 years. I know when you're lying. Who else? The silence stretched until it became unbearable. David Harper, she whispered. It took a moment for the name to register. Jess's husband? The accountant? She nodded. Jesus Christ. You've been fucking David Harper while his wife sits in wine bars planning my divorce? It wasn't like that. What was it like? Help me understand the mental gymnastics that made this okay in your head. She stood up again, anger replacing vulnerability. You want to know what it was like? It was exciting, it was passionate, it was everything our marriage stopped being years ago. So this is my fault? When was the last time you looked at me like you wanted me? When was the last time you planned a surprise, or brought me flowers, or made me feel like anything other than a roommate you occasionally sleep with? When was the last time you gave me a reason to? When was the last time you came home and actually wanted to be here instead of planning your next escape? We stared at each other across the wreckage of our marriage, two people who'd become strangers wearing familiar faces. I want a divorce, she said finally. I know. You made that clear last night. I want half of everything. The house, the retirement accounts, the investment portfolio. You can have it, she blinked, surprised. Just like that? Just like that. But I have conditions. What conditions? I smiled, and it wasn't a nice smile. You're going to tell Rachel, Kim, and Jess exactly what you did. You're going to explain to them how you seduced their husbands, where you met them, how long it's been going on. Everything. I won't do that. Then you won't get a dime from me. I'll drag this divorce out for years. I'll subpoena phone records, hotel receipts, credit card statements. I'll make sure every sordid detail becomes public record. You wouldn't. Try me. The standoff lasted 30 seconds before she cracked. Fine. I'll talk to them. Good. And one more thing. What? I want you out of the house by Friday. Where am I supposed to go? I don't know. Maybe Brian has a spare room, or Derek, or Marcus. I'm sure one of your boyfriends will take you in. She grabbed her purse and headed for the door. You're going to regret this, Evan. No, I said. I'm really not. The door slammed behind her, and for the first time in months, the house felt peaceful. The next 3 days were like watching a controlled demolition in slow motion. I went to work, supervised my crews, and pretended my life wasn't imploding while Millbrook's social hierarchy collapsed around me. Thursday morning, Sam called with an update. Rachel Martinez came by the gym yesterday, he said. Wanted to know if I'd seen Brian with anyone. Apparently, he's been working late a lot recently. What did you tell her? The truth. That I haven't seen Brian at all. Which is true. He's never set foot in my gym. But she seemed to think he'd been coming here for months. I was standing in the trailer that served as my office at the Henderson development site, watching my crew frame the foundation for a new medical complex. Honest work. Straightforward. You dig a hole, you pour concrete, you build something that lasts. No hidden agendas, no secret motivations. Did she say anything else? She asked if I thought Celia was telling the truth about the affairs. I told her that was between you and your wife. Diplomatic. I try, but Evan, Rachel looked like she hadn't slept in days. Whatever's happening over there, it's bad. My phone beeped with an incoming text from Kim Patterson. Kim, we need to talk, all of us, tonight. Me. About what? Kim. You know what? Santino's, 7 p.m., please. I showed the text to Sam. Looks like I'm going back to the scene of the crime. You sure that's smart? Probably not, but I'm curious to see how this plays out. Santino's wine bar occupied the ground floor of a converted Victorian mansion on Main Street. The owner, Tony Santino, had decorated it to look like a Tuscan villa, complete with exposed brick walls, wrought iron fixtures, and enough fake ivy to hide a small army. It was the kind of place that charged $18 for a glass of wine and called it artisanal. I arrived at 7 sharp to find Rachel, Kim, and Jess already seated in the same back room where they'd ambushed me 3 nights earlier. They looked like survivors of a natural disaster, hollow-eyed, shell-shocked, holding their wine glasses like lifelines. Evan, Rachel said as I approached. Thank you for coming. Ladies, I pulled out a chair and sat down. You all look terrible. Thanks, Kim said dryly. We feel terrible. Jess hadn't spoken yet. She was staring into her wine like it might contain answers to questions she was afraid to ask. So, I said, I'm assuming this isn't a social call. We talked to our husbands, Rachel said. All of them. And? Brian confessed. Derek confessed. David. She looked at Jess, who was still staring into her wine. David confessed too. I'm sorry, I said, and meant it. Whatever my feelings about their ambush, these women didn't deserve to have their marriages destroyed by my wife's selfishness. Are you? Kim asked. Because you seemed pretty happy to blow up our lives the other night. I was happy to blow up Celia's life. You three were collateral damage. Collateral damage, Jess repeated, speaking for the first time. Her voice was flat, emotionless. Is that what you call finding out your husband has been fucking your best friend for 8 months? The number hit me like a physical blow. 8 months? Since last Christmas. Apparently they started their little affair at your New Year's party. David said they snuck upstairs during the countdown. I remembered that party. Celia had disappeared for about 20 minutes, claimed she was dealing with a wine spill in the guest bathroom. David had been missing too, but I'd assumed he was outside smoking. He was always sneaking cigarettes when Jess wasn't looking. Jesus. It gets worse, Rachel said. Brian told me everything. How they met at that hotel in Albany. How Celia had this whole system worked out. Different hotels, different days of the week for different men. She was running it like a business. She told them she was separated, Kim added. Said you two were just living together for financial reasons until the divorce was finalized. And you believed her? Why wouldn't we? You two barely spoke to each other anymore. When we saw you together, you looked miserable. She wasn't wrong. The last few months of our marriage had been like living with a polite stranger. We'd shared a house, a bed, a bank account, but nothing else. So what happens now? I asked. Now we pick up the pieces, Rachel said. Brian moved out yesterday. He's staying at his brother's place in Albany. Derek's at a hotel, Kim said. The kids keep asking when Daddy's coming home. Jess finally looked up from her wine. David's trying to convince me it was just sex, that it didn't mean anything, like that makes it better. Does it? No, it makes it worse. At least if he loved her, there would be a reason. This was just recreational. We sat in silence for a moment. 4 people whose lives had been upended by one person's selfishness. Where is she now? Rachel asked. Hotel, I think. Maybe staying with one of her other friends. I don't really care. You don't care that your wife is homeless? My wife made her choices. She chose excitement over stability. She chose other men over her marriage. She chose to lie to everyone who trusted her. I'm done caring about the consequences of her decisions. That's cold, Evan. Is it? Because I seem to remember you 3 deciding to divorce me without bothering to ask if I wanted to save my marriage. Where was your compassion then? Rachel had the grace to look ashamed. We thought we were helping her. The words sat on the table like a spilled drink nobody wanted to admit they'd caused. Jess's mouth opened as if she had a rehearsed defense ready, but nothing came out. Kim's eyes dropped to her glass. Rachel's posture stiffened, her shoulders drawing up like she was bracing for impact. You were helping her, I repeated, quieter this time, because volume wasn't the point. You were giving her permission to destroy our marriage without feeling guilty about it. You were her enablers. We didn't know, Jess said, and the desperation in her voice almost sounded sincere. I shook my head. You didn't want to know. That's the difference. It was easier to believe I was the problem. The boring construction worker who wasn't sophisticated enough for your friend. It never occurred to you that maybe, just maybe, the problem was Celia. Kim flinched at Celia's name like it carried static. Rachel's gaze met mine for half a second, then looked away. You don't understand how she talks, Rachel said carefully, like she was navigating a minefield. She's convincing. She makes it sound like she's trapped, like she's suffocating. And what did that make me? I asked. The suffocating thing? Jess swallowed. She said you were distant, that you didn't listen, that you only cared about work. I laughed once, sharp and involuntary. Of course she said that. That's the oldest play in the book. If you want to betray someone and keep your self-image intact, you rewrite them into a villain first. That way the betrayal feels like self-care. My phone buzzed on the table, Unknown. We need to talk. It's important. C. I didn't even have to check the initial to know what it meant. I turned the screen toward them so they could see it. Speak of the devil. Jess leaned forward, eyes widening. Are you going to respond? Eventually, I said, picking up the phone and turning it over so the screen went dark. But first, I want to know something. Are you three planning to stay friends with her? The question landed heavier than anything else I'd said, because this wasn't about gossip. It wasn't about picking sides like it was a reality show. It was about whether the social system around Celia would keep rewarding her behavior, whether the same group chats and brunch invitations would keep telling her she was still the star of the story. They exchanged glances again, but this time the glances looked different, less defensive, more ashamed. I don't think that's possible, Rachel said finally, voice low. Good, I said, because if you did, if you forgave her and went back to your wine nights and your group chats, then everything that's happened would be meaningless. She'd learn she can destroy people's lives without consequences. She'd do it again. Maybe not to me, to someone else. Kim's eyebrows pinched together. What about forgiveness? She asked. What about second chances? I looked at her, really looked. Kim wasn't trying to excuse Celia. She was trying to make sense of the mess without accepting how ugly it was. People like Kim needed the world to be fair, because if it wasn't fair, then anyone could get hurt for no good reason. What about accountability? I asked. What about the fact that she's shown no remorse, no understanding of the pain she's caused? Forgiveness is earned, not given. Second chances are for people who admit what they did and change, not for people who cry when the consequences arrive. Jess wiped under one eye with her fingertip, smearing mascara. She said she was unhappy, she murmured, as if that should soften something. Unhappiness isn't a license, I replied. It's a signal to communicate, to get help, to leave honestly if you have to. Not to cheat and then recruit a support squad to make you feel brave. Rachel's jaw tightened. We didn't recruit anything, she said, but her voice lacked conviction. You did, I said, not cruelly, just plainly. Maybe not intentionally, but you were there. You affirmed her. You laughed at the jokes about me. You nodded when she framed me as the obstacle to her happiness. You helped her feel like what she was doing was normal. The table went quiet again, and in the quiet, I could feel something shift. They weren't angry at me now. They were angry at themselves, which was harder to handle because you can't argue with your own conscience. I didn't think it would go this far, Jess whispered. It always goes this far, I said. It just depends on how long it takes before the truth forces its way into the room. I stood, pushing my chair back. The scrape against the floor sounded loud in the small wine bar's corner booth. Ladies, I said, I'm sorry your marriages are collateral damage in Celia's war against monogamy, but don't mistake my sympathy for responsibility. I didn't create this mess. I'm just the only one willing to clean it up. Kim's mouth trembled, and she looked like she wanted to ask something else, like she wanted a softer ending that would allow everyone to go home and feel less stained by what they'd enabled. But there wasn't a softer ending. There was only the one that was true. Evan, Rachel called as I reached the door. I paused with my hand on the handle and looked back. What are you going to do? She asked, and her voice held a weird mixture of fear and respect. Fear for what would happen next. Respect for the fact that I wasn't bending. I kept my face calm. I'm going to give her exactly what she asked for, I said. A divorce, freedom, and all the consequences that come with it. Outside, the night air hit my face like relief. The wine bar had been warm and tight and heavy with perfume and old wood and half-swallowed guilt. The street was cold, clean, honest. Cars passed with a soft hush. Somewhere down the block, a couple laughed too loudly, drunk on their own drama. I felt like I'd walked out of a play and into real life. My phone buzzed again. Celia. Please call me. It's urgent. I stared at it for a beat, thumb hovering. A year ago, urgent would have hooked me. I would have imagined a crisis, a misunderstanding, a chance to be the good husband who fixes things. That was the role she'd trained me into, calm, stable, endlessly forgiving. A man who could be used as a foundation while she experimented with demolition. Not anymore. I deleted the message. No response, no argument, no emotional engagement, just removal. I got into my truck, started the engine, and pulled away from the curb. The headlights cut through the dark and the city opened up in front of me like a road I could finally drive without constantly checking my mirrors. Halfway home, my phone buzzed again, and I didn't look. It buzzed a second time, then a third. Each buzz was a tug on an old chain, and each time I ignored it, the chain felt weaker. When I reached my street, I slowed as I turned in, the familiar row of houses and parked cars appearing like silent witnesses. My place sat dark and steady, exactly how I'd left it. No drama, no movement, no chaos, just structure. I parked, turned off the engine, and sat for a moment with my hands on the steering wheel. I could feel the aftershock in my chest, the way adrenaline leaves behind a hollow tremble. But underneath it, there was something solid. Clarity. I'd spent months being treated like an inconvenience in my own marriage, like my needs were old-fashioned and my loyalty was boring. Tonight, I'd finally said the thing everyone had been avoiding. Celia wasn't a victim. She was an author, and she'd been writing with other people's lives like they were disposable drafts. I stepped out of the truck and looked up at my house. Tomorrow would be paperwork, phone calls, a lawyer who would speak in clean sentences about assets and timelines and filings. It would be exhausting, but it would be honest work. Work that built something instead of tearing it down. My phone buzzed one last time as I walked up the steps. Celia. Evan, please, don't do this. I didn't delete it immediately. I let it sit there on the screen for a few seconds longer than it deserved, just long enough to recognize the pattern. She wasn't begging me not to do this because she loved me. She was begging because she hated losing control of the story. Then I locked my door, went inside, and left her words outside with the night. Friday morning brought unseasonably warm weather and a text from my lawyer confirming that the divorce papers had been filed. I was drinking coffee on my back deck, enjoying the quiet, when Mrs. Keller appeared at the fence that separated our properties. Morning, Evan. Beautiful day, isn't it? It is indeed, Mrs. Keller. She was holding a plate of what looked like homemade muffins. I thought you might be hungry. Bachelor life can be rough on the nutrition. I accepted the muffins gratefully. You didn't have to do that. Nonsense. We neighbors need to look out for each other. She paused, studying my face. You look better, more relaxed. I feel better. Good. A man shouldn't have to walk on eggshells in his own home. Mrs. Keller had been watching our marriage deteriorate from her kitchen window for months. Nothing escaped her notice, not the separate cars leaving at different times, not the lack of conversation when we worked in the yard together, not the way Celia had started dressing like she was going to nightclubs instead of grocery stores. Mrs. Keller, can I ask you something? Of course, dear. How long have you known? She didn't pretend to misunderstand. About the affairs? Months, maybe longer. That Martinez boy's car was just the most obvious. There was a red Mustang that came by regularly in the spring, a black BMW a few weeks ago. Why didn't you say anything? What was I supposed to say? Evan, your wife is entertaining gentlemen callers while you're at work? That's not a conversation anyone wants to have. My phone rang. Celia's name flashed on the screen. Excuse me for a moment, I told Mrs. Keller, then answered the call. Evan, thank God. We need to talk immediately. Good morning to you too, Celia. This isn't a joke. I'm at the police station. That got my attention. What? Rachel Martinez filed a complaint against me. She's claiming I'm harassing her family. Are you harassing her family? I went to her house to explain, Celia, what part of stay away from your victims didn't you understand? They're not victims. This is all being blown out of proportion. I could hear voices in the background, official-sounding voices that suggested she was, in fact, at the police station. What do you want from me? I need you to come down here. Tell them this is all a misunderstanding. Is it a misunderstanding? Of course it is. So you didn't have affairs with 3 married men? You didn't lie to their wives for months? You didn't use our house as your personal brothel? The silence stretched. I need help, Evan. No, you need a lawyer, and probably a therapist, but you don't need me. I hung up and turned back to Mrs. Keller, who was pretending she hadn't been listening to every word. Trouble? She asked innocently. Nothing I can't handle. An hour later, Sam showed up with coffee and donuts from Murphy's Bakery. Heard there was some excitement at the police station this morning, he said, settling into one of my deck chairs. News travels fast. Jenny heard it from her hairdresser, who heard it from the dispatcher's wife. Apparently, Rachel Martinez showed up at the station around 8 a.m., demanding they do something about Celia. What exactly is she supposed to have done? According to the gossip mill, she went to Rachel's house at 6 in the morning, banging on the door, demanding to talk. When Rachel wouldn't let her in, she started shouting details about her affair with Brian loud enough for the whole neighborhood to hear. I shook my head. She's lost her mind. Gets better. After Rachel called the cops, Celia apparently went to Kim Patterson's house and did the same thing, then to Jess Harper's workplace. She went to the elementary school? Yep. Showed up during morning recess, demanding to see Kim. The principal had to escort her off the property. Jesus. She's spiraling, Evan. Whatever control she thought she had over this situation, it's gone. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Unknown. Your wife is insane. She needs to be stopped. Brian Martinez. I showed the text to Sam. Looks like Brian's getting nervous. Can you blame him? His marriage is over, his wife is talking to lawyers, and his former mistress is having a public breakdown. Not my problem. Maybe not, but it could become your problem if she keeps using your name. What do you mean? Think about it. She's desperate. She's panicking, and she's looking for someone to blame. How long before she starts telling people this is all your fault? That you drove her to have affairs? That you're the real villain in this story? I hadn't considered that possibility, but Sam was right. Celia had always been good at rewriting history to cast herself as the victim. So, what do you suggest? Get ahead of the story. Let people know your side before she has a chance to spin it. How? Sam grinned. Leave that to me. That afternoon, I was at the job site when my phone rang. The caller ID showed Detective Lisa Morrison, Millbrook PD. Mr. Driscoll, this is Detective Morrison. I was hoping we could have a conversation about your wife. What about her? She's been involved in several incidents today that have resulted in complaints. I understand you two are in the process of divorcing? That's correct. Has she made any threats against you? Any indication that she might be unstable? I thought about the question carefully. She's been under a lot of stress lately. The divorce, losing her job, having her friends cut contact. It's been difficult for her. She lost her job? Her employer found out about her affairs with coworkers. Apparently, there are policies about that sort of thing. I see. Mr. Driscoll, I need to ask, do you feel safe in your home? From Celia? Yes. She's not violent, just desperate. Desperate people can be unpredictable. If she contacts you, if she shows up at your house or workplace, I want you to call us immediately. Is she being charged with anything? Not at this time. But we've issued a warning about harassment. If she continues this behavior, there will be consequences. After I hung up, I sat in my truck for a few minutes, processing the conversation. Celia had always been dramatic, but this level of self-destruction was new. It was like watching someone deliberately set fire to their own life. My phone buzzed with a group text from Sam to what looked like half the town. Sam. Guys, just wanted to clear the air about some rumors going around. Evan Driscoll is a good man who's been dealing with a difficult situation with dignity and class. Anyone who knows him knows he's not the kind of person who would hurt anyone, even someone who hurt him. Let's make sure we support our neighbors when they need it most. The responses came flooding in. Tony, Santino's owner. Evan's always been a stand-up guy. Whatever's happening, I'm sure he's handling it right. Maria, from the hardware store. Some people just can't take responsibility for their own actions. Hang in there, Evan. Coach Williams, high school football. Real men don't air their dirty laundry in public. Respect. Within an hour, I had 24 messages of support from people I barely knew. Sam had effectively inoculated the town against whatever story Celia might try to tell. You sneaky bastard, I texted him. Sam, I prefer strategically proactive. Buy me a beer later. That evening, I was grilling a steak on my back deck when a car pulled into my driveway. Not Celia's Honda, but a black BMW I didn't recognize. A man got out, tall, well-dressed, nervous-looking. I walked around to the front of the house to meet him. Mr. Driscoll, I'm Tom Chen. I think we need to talk. Tom Chen. The name from Celia's list. The co-worker she'd been sleeping with. What can I do for you, Tom? I wanted to apologize. And to explain. You don't owe me an explanation. Yes, I do. What happened between Celia and me? It was wrong. I knew she was married. I knew it would hurt people. I did it anyway. He looked miserable. The kind of miserable that comes from realizing you've made a catastrophic error in judgment. Why are you telling me this? Because she's telling people you knew, that you gave her permission, that your marriage was open. The rage that followed was pure and clean. She's saying what? She showed up at our office today, started screaming at our HR director, claiming she was being discriminated against for her lifestyle choices. She said you and she had an agreement, that you were fine with her seeing other people. That's a lie. I know. I told HR it was a lie. But she was convincing. Desperate people can be very convincing. What did HR say? They're conducting an investigation. They want to interview you. I nodded. Fine. I'll tell them the truth. There's something else. She's been calling my wife, telling her that I'm the father of a baby she's carrying. The world stopped. What baby? There is no baby. At least I don't think there is. But she's been telling people she's pregnant, that one of her partners is the father. Jesus Christ. My wife is 8 months pregnant with our first child. This is destroying her. I could see why he looked so miserable. His wife was about to give birth, and Celia was poisoning what should have been the happiest time of their lives. Tom, I'm sorry, but I can't control what she does or says. I know. I wanted you to know that not all of us are like her. Some of us actually feel guilty about what we did. After he left, I called Detective Morrison. She's escalating, I told her. Making up stories, claiming to be pregnant, harassing innocent people. We've had 3 more complaints since this afternoon. Mr. Driscoll, I think your wife is having some kind of breakdown. Has she ever exhibited this kind of behavior before? Never. She's always been dramatic, but this is different. We're going to issue a restraining order for your protection and for the protection of the other people she's been contacting. Good. In the meantime, I'd suggest staying alert. People in crisis don't always make rational decisions. That night, I double-checked all the locks on my house and made sure my phone was fully charged. Whatever Celia was planning next, I wanted to be ready for it. Saturday morning arrived with the kind of crisp autumn air that made everything seem possible. I was drinking coffee on my deck, reading the local paper, when my phone rang. The caller ID showed my lawyer's number. Evan, we have a problem. What kind of problem? Your wife filed a countersuit yesterday. She's claiming emotional abuse, financial control, and He paused. She's seeking alimony and half of your business assets. What business assets? I'm an employee. She's claiming you've been hiding income, that you have side contracts, unreported cash payments. She's also alleging that you threatened her and her friends. I set down my coffee cup. None of that is true. I know, but she's got a lawyer now. Patricia Vance from Albany. She's good and she's expensive. This is going to get messy. How messy? Depositions, financial discovery, character witnesses. She's going to try to paint you as a controlling abuser who drove her to seek comfort elsewhere. Can she do that? She can try. The question is whether anyone will believe her. After I hung up, I sat in the quiet morning air, processing this new development. Celia wasn't just having a breakdown, she was launching a counterattack, trying to rewrite the narrative, make herself the victim, and take me down in the process. My phone buzzed with a text from Sam. Sam, turn on Channel 8 News, now. I found the remote and switched to the local morning show. The anchor, a perfectly coiffed woman named Jennifer Walsh, was interviewing someone off camera. Joining us this morning is a local woman who says she's been the victim of a harassment campaign by her estranged husband and his friends. Celia, thank you for being here. The camera panned to show Celia sitting in the studio, looking perfectly composed and sympathetic. She'd clearly spent time preparing for this. Professional makeup, conservative outfit, the kind of wounded dignity that played well on television. Thank you for having me, Jennifer. I'm hoping that by speaking out, I can prevent other women from going through what I've experienced. Tell us what's been happening. My husband and I are going through a difficult divorce. Instead of handling it privately, like adults, he's chosen to wage a campaign of intimidation and harassment. He's turned my friends against me, spread lies about my character, and made it impossible for me to work or live peacefully in this community. I stared at the screen in disbelief. She was completely rewriting history, casting herself as the innocent victim of a vindictive husband. That must be incredibly difficult. It is, but what's worse is the way the community has rallied around him. Men supporting men, you know. Nobody wants to hear the woman's side of the story. What would you like people to know? Celia looked directly into the camera, and for a moment, I saw a flash of the manipulative intelligence that had made her so successful in HR. I'd like them to know that there are two sides to every story. That sometimes, when a marriage fails, both people bear responsibility. And that destroying someone's reputation and livelihood isn't justice, it's revenge. The interview continued for another few minutes, with Celia painting herself as a victim of small-town misogyny and her husband's vindictive nature. She was careful not to make any specific accusations that could be proven false, but the implication was clear. I was the villain in this story. My phone started ringing before the interview was over. Sam, Mrs. Keller, my lawyer, co-workers, friends, everyone wanted to know if I'd seen it, what I was going to do about it. Don't respond, my lawyer advised. Don't give any interviews, don't make any statements. Let her dig her own grave. But Sam disagreed. You can't let her control the narrative. People are going to start believing her if you don't defend yourself. What do you suggest? Tell the truth, all of it. Let people decide for themselves who's lying. That afternoon, I found myself in an unusual situation, sitting across from Jennifer Walsh in the same studio where Celia had performed her victim act that morning. Mr. Driscoll, thank you for coming in. I understand you wanted to respond to your wife's allegations. I did, because what she said this morning wasn't just misleading, it was a complete fabrication. She claims you've been harassing her and turning the community against her. Jennifer, my wife had affairs with multiple married men over a period of 2 years. She used our home, our bed, to conduct these affairs while I was at work. She lied to her friends, to her co-workers, to everyone who trusted her. When her friends found out what she'd done, they cut contact with her. When her employer found out she was sleeping with co-workers, they fired her. None of that was my doing. Those are serious allegations. They're not allegations. They're facts. I have documentation, hotel receipts, text messages, photographs. I have witnesses who can confirm her behavior. I pulled out a folder I'd prepared with Sam's help. Mrs. Eleanor Keller, who lives next door to us, can testify about the cars she saw in our driveway while I was at work. Tom Chen, one of her co-workers, has admitted to their affair and can confirm that she told him our marriage was open, which was a lie. What about her claims that you threatened her? I never threatened her. I told her I wanted a divorce, and I told her I wouldn't protect her from the consequences of her actions anymore. If she considers honesty a threat, that says more about her than it does about me. Jennifer leaned forward. Mr. Driscoll, some people might say that publicly exposing someone's private affairs is cruel, regardless of the circumstances. Some people might say that having affairs with your friends' husbands is cruel. Some people might say that lying to everyone who trusts you is cruel. Some people might say that trying to destroy your husband's reputation to cover up your own behavior is cruel. I looked directly into the camera, the way Celia had. I'm not the victim here, but I'm not the villain either. I'm just a man who found out his wife was living a double life and decided he deserved better. The interview aired that evening. Within an hour, my phone was buzzing with messages of support. People who had been on the fence about the situation were now firmly in my corner. Mrs. Keller. Well said, dear. Truth always wins in the end. Rachel Martinez. Thank you for setting the record straight. We should have believed you from the beginning. Tony Santino. Drinks on the house next time you're in. Stand-up guys deserve stand-up treatment. But the message that mattered most came from Sam. Sam. Proud of you, brother. That took guts. Sunday morning brought unexpected visitors. I was working in my garage, organizing tools, when a car pulled into my driveway. Rachel Martinez got out, followed by Kim Patterson and Jess Harper. They looked different than they had at the wine bar, less shell-shocked, more determined. We saw your interview, Rachel said without preamble. And we owe you an apology, a real one. I set down the wrench I'd been holding. You don't owe me anything. Yes, we do, Kim said. We let her manipulate us. We believed her lies about you, about your marriage. We participated in ambushing you with a divorce announcement, like we were some kind of intervention committee. We were terrible friends to you, Jess added. And we were terrible friends to each other. We should have seen what she was doing. I studied their faces, looking for signs of insincerity or hidden agendas. I found none. What changed your minds? Her performance yesterday morning, Rachel said. Watching her play the victim on television when we know what she really did, it was disgusting. She destroyed our marriages and then tried to make herself the hero of the story, Kim added. So, what happens now? Now we make sure everyone knows the truth, Jess said. We're going to give statements to your lawyer, testimonials about what really happened. We're going to make sure her lies don't stick. You don't have to do that. Yes, we do. She used our friendship as cover for her affairs. She made us accomplices without our knowledge. We're not going to let her get away with that. Rachel stepped forward. Evan, I know we can't be friends after this. Too much has happened. But we can be allies. We can make sure the truth comes out. And we can make sure she faces consequences for what she did, Kim added. That afternoon, the three women met with my lawyer and gave detailed statements about Celia's behavior, her lies, and her manipulation. They provided text messages, emails, and testimony that completely contradicted her victim narrative. Monday morning brought the final piece of the puzzle. Detective Morrison called with news. We arrested your wife last night. For what? Harassment, making false police reports, and violation of the restraining order. She showed up at Tom Chen's house around midnight, banging on the door, screaming about paternity tests and lawsuits. His wife is in the hospital. She went into early labor from the stress. Is the baby okay? Both mother and baby are fine, but your wife's behavior directly contributed to a medical emergency. That's a serious charge. What happens now? She'll be arraigned this afternoon. Given her recent behavior, I doubt she'll get bail. I hung up and sat in my truck, processing the information. Celia had finally gone too far. Her desperate attempts to control the narrative had led to real consequences for real people. My phone rang. My lawyer. Evan, I have news. Celia's attorney called this morning. They want to settle. What kind of settlement? She'll accept the original divorce terms. No alimony, 50-50 split of marital assets, no claims against your income or business. In exchange, you agree not to pursue harassment charges or seek damages for her behavior. What about the people she's hurt? Tom Chen's family, Rachel, Kim, Jess? That's between them and her. But Evan, I think you should take this deal. It ends everything cleanly. You get your divorce, you keep your assets, and you never have to deal with her again. I thought about it for exactly 30 seconds. Deal. Tuesday afternoon, I sat in a conference room at my lawyer's office, signing papers that would officially end my 23-year marriage. Celia wasn't there. She was still in jail, awaiting arraignment. But her lawyer was, a sharp-dressed woman, who looked like she'd rather be anywhere else. Mr. Driscoll, she said as I signed the final document, my client asked me to tell you something. What's that? She's sorry. For everything. I looked up from the papers. Is she really? The lawyer hesitated. I think she's sorry she got caught. That's what I thought. I signed my name with a flourish, officially ending the worst chapter of my life and beginning whatever came next. That evening, Sam and I sat on my deck, drinking beer and watching the sun set over Millbrook. The air was crisp, full of the promise of winter and new beginnings. So what now? He asked. Now I figure out who I am when I'm not married to Celia Driscoll. Any ideas? A few. I might travel, see some places I've always wanted to visit. Maybe take that construction management course I've been putting off. Sounds like a plan. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Unknown. Mr. Driscoll, this is Tom Chen. I wanted you to know, my wife had the baby this morning. Healthy girl, 7 pounds 3 ounces. We're naming her Hope. Thank you for everything you did. Tom. I showed the text to Sam. Life goes on. It does indeed. We sat in comfortable silence, two friends who'd weathered a storm and come out stronger on the other side. 3 months later, I ran into Rachel Martinez at the grocery store. She looked different. Lighter somehow, like she'd been carrying a weight that had finally been lifted. Evan, how are you? I'm good, Rachel. Really good. How about you? Getting by. The divorce was finalized last week. I'm sorry. Don't be. It was the right thing. Brian and we were never as happy as we pretended to be. Maybe this was the push we both needed. What's next for you? I'm thinking about moving. Fresh start, you know? Maybe somewhere warm. That sounds nice. She hesitated, then said, I heard Celia got out of jail last week. I heard that too. Are you worried? No, she's someone else's problem now. Good for you. As I drove home that day, I thought about the strange journey that had brought me to this point. A year ago, I'd been trapped in a marriage that was slowly killing me. I'd been living with a woman who'd been systematically betraying everything we'd built together. Now I was free to make my own choices, to build my own life, to find my own happiness. My phone rang as I pulled into my driveway. The caller ID showed a number I didn't recognize. Hello? Mr. Driscoll? This is Sarah Mitchell from Henderson Development's corporate office. I was wondering if you'd be interested in discussing a promotion opportunity. I smiled. I'm listening. 6 months later, I was living in Charlotte, North Carolina, managing construction projects for Henderson's Southeastern Division. I had a new apartment with a view of the city skyline, a new job that challenged me, and a new life that was entirely my own. I never heard from Celia again. According to the gossip network that still reached me through Sam and Mrs. Keller, she'd left Millbrook shortly after her release from jail. Some said she'd moved to California. Others claimed she was in Florida. Nobody seemed to know for sure, and nobody seemed to care. Rachel had indeed moved somewhere warm, Phoenix, according to her Christmas card. Kim had stayed in Millbrook but had started dating again, a widowed teacher who seemed to appreciate her in ways Derek never had. Jess had started a new blog about single motherhood that was gaining a following. Life, as it turned out, went on. One evening, as I sat on my new balcony watching the Charlotte skyline light up against the darkening sky, I got a text from Sam. Sam, saw something interesting in the paper today. Thought you might want to know. He'd attached a photo of a newspaper clipping. The headline read, "Local woman charged with identity theft, credit card fraud." The photo showed Celia being led away in handcuffs. I stared at the image for a long moment, then deleted it. Some chapters of your life deserve to stay closed. I poured myself a glass of wine, a nice Chardonnay, not the overpriced swill from Santino's, and raised it in a toast to the Charlotte skyline. To new beginnings, I said aloud. The city lights twinkled back at me like stars, full of promise and possibility.